Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Melissa and today we are doing the mid-year freakout tag. Alright everyone, I'm so glad to see you here for another video. Today is a fun one. I really enjoyed filming this one. This is the mid-year freakout tag, which was originally created by Ellie and Cami here on YouTube, and I will link them in the description box below. So there's a total of, I think, 16 questions here, so we've got some bits to talk about. So grab a beverage, some hot coffee, whatever you would like, and let's get into this tag. Alright, the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2022? Now, if you've been around my channel for any length of time, this will come as no surprise to you, and that is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. After my obsession with the Bloodsworn saga at the beginning of the year, imagine my surprise when I finished this book and I loved it even more. So in this story, we follow Gabriel, who is the last Silver Saint, and he has been captured by the vampires, and they make him sit down and tell his story. We learn how he is recruited by the Silver Saints and trained. We follow him through all the battles and learn about his relationships. The writing style in this one hooked me from the very first pages, and the atmosphere that was created by the author cannot be ignored, and I enjoyed every single moment. I cannot wait for the second book to be announced. Alright, next question is the best sequel you've read so far in 2022. And I'm beginning to think that this video may be a broken record, but that would have to be The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is the second book in the Bloodsworn series. I was lucky enough to get approved for an e-arc of this on NetGalley, and I devoured it. We are continuing to follow Varg, Orca, and Elvar, along with a couple additional perspectives in this book, and I was completely immersed in the story just like the first book. I enjoy learning more about the politics of this world, the gods, their effect on the societies of Vigrid. One of my favorite parts about this sequel is the character arcs. We learn more about our favorite characters, some of the reasons that fuel their choices, in addition to learning just how many of these characters are connected by histories and family ties. The other favorite part of this novel is how much more of the world we do get to explore in this sequel. A bunch of new locations. We venture to new to us places, and each one is noticeably different. I really enjoyed all the different seasons that you read about, the different terrains. This is a very well put together plot. The characters and the world building made this a perfect read for me. The next question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. And happy publication day to Lynette Noni. Her third and final installment in the Prison Healer series comes out today, and that is The Blood Trader. I first fell in love with this series after receiving it in a fairy loot box. I've read a lot of YA fantasy, as most of you know, but I feel like this one has always been just a little bit more. I'm not really sure how to describe that. Sure, we have the typical tropes. You have the chosen one, a little bit of not like the other girls, some hidden royalty, but the underlying issues explored in this book really hooked me. I can't say too much about the third book as it will spoil any of the previous ones, but in the first book you are introduced to a world within a world as you follow Kiva, as she is a healer within a large infamous prison in this world. Any and all criminals of the worst kind are brought there. The prison is called Zalendov. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And all of these criminals, more often than not, are forgotten by societies and families, and they become slaves who literally work themselves to death. So the rebel queen is captured and brought to the prison, and she is terminally ill. And Kiva is tasked with keeping her alive long enough to undergo a series of challenges called the trial by ordeal. Now, this challenge is only given to the most dangerous of criminals, and meanwhile, Kiva receives a coded message from her family outside the prison telling her to make sure that she keeps this woman alive, that they are coming. Knowing that this woman cannot possibly survive these trials, Kiva finds herself volunteering to take the Rebel Queen's place in the trials. The plot of this was multifaceted that really kept me interested. While the main overarch of the story is going on, you are watching Kiva battle within herself, avoiding and trying to stop an unknown plague that is gripping the prison. There is a new inmate chasing her heart, and a prison rebellion on top of everything else. I really felt connected to Kiva as she struggles with her past and her present and her future. There is so much that is unknown. I found it amazing how the author was able to write the prison in a way that was so gripping, despite being restricted to just like the prison and the grounds. Alright, so continuing on. The next question is the most anticipated release for the second half of 2022. So, despite the fact that I've been recently reading a lot less YA fantasy, this series is one that has been a bit of a love-hate relationship for me. The first book, while it built quite the following, I gave the first one a low 3-star as it just didn't hit for me like everyone else. The story opens with a prologue that lets the reader know a prophecy story is about to happen, and we follow our main character Amelia, who works in her family's restaurant. Witches aren't approved in this world, and those that are hide in secret, as does the women in Amelia's family. So when her twin sister is murdered, we follow a bit of a mystery while Amelia searches for who killed her sister. You know, I was so enormously annoyed with Amelia's character. To me, she was just too naive, especially when, like, the reality was right in front of her. And her inner monologue, I found to be nothing short of just a lot of whining. However, she does come across Wrath, and known to Amelia as a demon who she binds to herself accidentally in order to find out what happens to her sister. Now, I read this book strictly because of Wrath. I found his character interesting and compelling, and then additionally the cliffhanger at the end made me want to read the second book. So when the second book came out earlier this year, I believe, or towards the end of last year, it was much better than the first. We see Amelia's character grow exponentially, and the plot becomes clearer, more intricate and interesting. The angst between Amelia and Wrath in the second book is another selling point for me. I really enjoyed it. That being said, the plot twists and reveals in this one made for a much better, well-rounded plot, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how where the third installment takes us. And I do believe that that will be the final book in the series, and that comes out October, maybe? I'll put it up here on the screen because I don't remember the exact release date. But the third and final installment will be called Kingdom of the Feared. Alright, so the next question is, what has been your biggest disappointment of 2022 so far? And I really had to go back through my reading journal and look, because I've actually had a very good reading year. I haven't had a lot of books that I really didn't like. However, Pennyblade by J.L. Warad. I was intrigued by the synopsis of this book, and I did request it on NetGalley. I'm pretty much just going to read to you my review, as it pretty much sums up my thoughts on this one. My goal this year was to read more adult, so I was excited to try another one, and honestly, this left me skeptical that adult fantasy was even going to be something that I wanted to pursue. So let me grab my phone and I'm going to read you that review. Okay, so my full review. Let me start off by first saying that reading more adult fantasy is a top goal for me in 2022. I've been slowly making my way through different adult authors and still looking for my favorite fantasy style reads. This review is structured a bit differently than my other reviews in that I'm only writing under two categories, what I liked and what I didn't like. Warning. Sex. I mean lots of segs. Possibly cringy, vulgarity. Also, there are a lot of potential trigger warnings. So, what I liked. This story is all about two races being at war. We have the mainland with humans and the Isle with Comrack, which are the elves. We follow a couple of other subclasses such as petty blades who are mercenaries like our protagonist, Kira. We follow her experiences through different timelines throughout her life, giving us a glimpse of what has shaped her personality and view of the world around her. I loved the character study here. Please know, Kira is not necessarily a character that we are supposed to admire or cheer, but the grit and realistic portrayal of a person that has been shaped by her experiences and environments is clearly depicted here. Now, what I didn't like. I could not connect with the main character. I don't know if it's a case of a man writing a female character, ? Whatever the reason, this is a great book for some people. I was just not one of these people. By no means is this a bad book. It just carried themes throughout that left me cringing and at times very uncomfortable. I also appreciate the plot, which in this, there really isn't one. Again, it seems to be more of a character study, which just isn't what I tend to gravitate toward in a high fantasy novel. So, I'm trying to put this into words, but my biggest gripe was her relationships between other people. And the sexy scenes were just, I mean, for lack of a better word, cringy. And made me very, very uncomfortable. So yeah, it was bad enough that it overshadowed the whole book. So, that being said, don't let my opinion sway you from reading this book if it's something you've had on your radar. Even though there were a few reviews on Goodreads that were similar to mine, there were plenty other ones who did enjoy this book. This one just wasn't for me. Alright, the next question is your biggest surprise of 2022 so far, and for that I have chosen the Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. Now, if you don't already know, I am a diehard fantasy reader. That is almost exclusively what I read. However, I was seeing this book all over Bookstagram and all over TikTok, and then the Nerdy Narrative announced it as the book club pick. So I decided to give it a try. The blurb on the front really sold me. It said, "Lovers of true crime will get a kick out of this thriller that oozes atmosphere." Now, when I picked this up, I did not realize the paranormal aspect of what is going on in this, and after reading the prologue, I was really nervous. After just a couple chapters, though, I was completely hooked. We follow dual timelines here. We are in 1977, where Beth Greer has been accused and acquitted of a murder. And then we are also following Shay Collins in 2017. She is a doctor's office receptionist by day and a true crime blogger by night. It's kind of like a hobby for her. And she meets the infamous Beth Greer one day when Beth walks into her doctor's office. Surprisingly, Beth agrees to be interviewed and to tell her story to Shay. This book has it all. The mystery, paranormal elements that made my hair stand up on the back of my neck, the atmospheric writing that will tickle all of your senses, and even a little bit of a character study. And you know, we listen to Beth tell her story and we see bits of flashbacks. All are well written and wrapped up nicely. I was a bit disappointed with the ending, but only because I become so attached to the characters that I didn't want this story to end. The next question is, who is a new favorite author you found in 2022? And you know, this was a hard one, and I found myself in a bit of a love triangle of sorts. So on one hand, John Gwynne was really my official entry into the adult fantasy genre. Jay Kristoff, whom I grew to love in the YA sci-fi series of Aurora Cycle, who completely blew my socks off with Empire of the Vampire. And then lastly, Simone St. James for introducing me to a genre that I am quickly becoming more interested in and inclined to read. All in all, I still settled myself that currently I'm choosing John Gwynne. I love the fantasy genre so much, and considering how much I fell in love with the Nordic-inspired Bloodsworn saga at the very beginning of this year, he will always hold a special place in my heart, and I will definitely buy any and all books that he ever writes. Alright, so who is your newest fictional crush? At first, I found this question a little bit difficult. Considering my reads so far this year, I haven't been reading much of the romance variety. Sure, there is still romantic elements to be found in your high fantasy stories, but of the ones I've read, not much romance is really focused upon. So that being said, I started to realize I was confining myself to the very small box of poetic flirting and domineering alphas claiming their damsels, etc. But this doesn't have to stay in that box. So why can't I just crush on a character that I admire for what they stand for and who they are? So in thinking about that, it did open my mind up to a lot more possibilities. However, I did end up settling on Gabriel from Empire of the Vampire. I love this character. He is morally gray, he is a no-holds-barred kind of thinker, and more often than not leans toward very black and white thinking, which I can relate to. Obviously, the black and white thinking, I'm sure, probably has to do with his religious background of the Silver Saints and how he was trained to talk and think and feel, but I found myself relating to that part of his personality. Most of the time he's not afraid to admit to himself that he's messed up or made a wrong decision. I love that he owns those mistakes and has a very offhanded humility in regards to the grand reputation that you read about in this book. Can we also talk about the humorous relationship that he has with his sword? If you read this book, you know. I love that aspect of it. So yeah, definitely Gabriel is my new fictional crush. Okay, the next question is kind of following up on those lines. Who is your new favorite character? And as much as I want to keep repeating myself here with Empire of the Vampire and even the Bloodsworn Saga, I wanted to try to spotlight just another character that I do enjoy and one that is a top contender for a crush, and that is none other than Orca. She is one of the characters and perspectives that we read in the Bloodsworn Saga. I can relate to her bluntness and her ferocity in protecting her son. She chooses her own path. And while in the second book we kind of see her struggle a bit more in regards to her choices, the one thing that did stand out to me was that her ability to own her choices, her own shortcomings, and she lives very unapologetically. I admire her ability to push through whatever is before her in a very straightforward way. You know, a lot of times in reading inner monologues, it can be a constant repeat of the secret fear of death. But this woman makes no bones about the fact that every situation may see her, the victim, as of the victor. And she always takes that head on. And I love that about her. Alright, so the next question is a book that made you cry. So honestly, I'll let you in on a little secret. It really doesn't take too much to make me cry. At least where romances are concerned. Considering the bulk of my reading this year hasn't included much romance, the last book I truly remember literally sobbing over was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the Crescent City series. I really can't say what made me cry specifically, as it is a spoiler, but that ending. If you know, you know. I think the last book before this one to make me sob uncontrollably was also by Sarah J. Maas, and that was A Court of Silver Flames. So, I don't know, I'm kind of seeing a trend here. Apparently Sarah J. Maas can make me bawl my eyes out like a little baby. Alright, so what is a book that made you happy? I chose Rat Queens and Volume 2 specifically. This is a graphic novel series about a group of battle maidens. Each one is different in both species, question mark, is that the right word, and their personalities. This is just a fun fantasy romp of battles and blood and gore and badass female characters with an awful lot of fighting between themselves and snarky banter. And this is just a really fun way for me to break up those more convoluted fantasy tomes that we see so often in fantasy. So yeah, definitely love this series. Alright, so the next question is a favorite book to movie adaptation you've seen so far this year. So this question doesn't really apply. I watch very little TV these days. When you have 2 children that are 5 and under, and you also have 2 dogs that think they're human, and then taking care of said 4 by myself, my hubby travels and is gone 95% of the time. So on top of all that, and studying for dual degrees, and making content, well, let's just say that my free time is much better spent reading. I'll mention that the last show that I did watch and enjoy was the adaptation of the Leigh Bardugo's Shadow and Bone series. It is an absolutely stunning series, and I do look forward to the next season. Next question is a favorite review you've written so far this year. Now, I don't like this question. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't know why, but I always find it a little bit hard to talk about myself in terms of accomplishment or bragging about something I've done or written. However, I recently posted a review on my blog for a book tour. It was for the indie published book Jabberwock's Curse by R.V. Bowman. This book surprised me with how much that I enjoyed it. I didn't want to put this down. This is a YA fantasy, and it is an Alice in Wonderland retelling. I'll tell you that those typically aren't my favorite, but this one, alright, we're getting close to the end. So the next question is, what is the most beautiful book you've bought this year? I've been subscribed to different book boxes in the last couple years, so this one was a little bit difficult to just choose one. However, I'm going to say The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. It is so gorgeous inside and out, and the colors, I love these colors. Even though I don't use these type of colors in my decor or even in my clothes, I tend to wear natural muted creams and browns and blacks, but the colors of this just make my heart feel so good. So I'm going to show you this. So this is the front cover and the spine, and then this is the back. Alright, and then we've got sprayed edges all the way around. It's a very pretty, like, robin's egg teal blue. And then we also got this beautiful stenciling. Let's see if I can get it to focus, of a dragon on here, and I just think it's beautiful. But that is not all. So I'm going to take the dust jacket off here and show you the hardback. The hardback is foiled as well, and it's got this gorgeous foiling of a dragon on the front. And then we've got some pretty stenciling. Whoops, I'm holding it upside down. Some beautiful foiling on the spine, and then the back is plain. Now, there's one more beautiful thing. Whoever did the artwork for this, and I need to look. Yeah, I don't know who did the illustrations, but here is the front end papers, and I mean, oh my gosh, is that not just stunning? The detail, and then the one in the back is actually different as well. So, so beautiful. So yeah, very, very pretty. But like I said, I've got quite a few that are just absolutely gorgeous. Alright, so next question. We've got two left. So what books do you really need to read by the end of the year? This one makes me laugh. So I promise you, I'm not going to make you sit here and put you through the extensive list that is my TBR. But There are some that I have really been wanting to get to that I've heard so many good things about, and so I'm just going to go over them real quick. The first one is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This is the first in the First Law trilogy. I have yet to read a book by this author, so I'm really curious to see what I think of Joe Abercrombie's writing. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I think I'm probably one of the last people on BookTube that has yet to read this, so I definitely want to get to this by the end of the year. This one, which I've actually already started, is Malice by John Gwynne. I'm going back. I wanted to go back and read all the books by him, so I'm starting with, this is of the Faithful and the Fallen? Yeah, The Faithful and the Fallen, and this is the first book in that series. Last but not least, after being blown away by Empire the Vampire, I want to finally get to the Nevernight Chronicles by Jay Kristoff. I have no idea what this is about, but I do look forward to reading this series as well. Alright, so the last question is probably, excuse me, one of my favorite questions, and that is a favorite community member. I absolutely love this question on the list. I shifted my viewing on BookTube in the past couple months and have been introduced to a lot of new to me channels. Some people don't have a huge following, others have. But that being said, I am forever a subscriber and mega fan of G over at Book Roast, and I'm also a member of her Patreon. Her content is so aesthetic. I love her to death. Her personality is just beautiful. Her recommendations are always good, and of course her readathon, I swear, is the best on the internet, and I can't wait till August when we have our next semester at Aurelium. Another one I'm also a member of on Patreon who I've come to love is The Nerdy Narrative. Her book reviews and her recommendations are so good and give me just enough information that I can decide if I want to read it or not. And finally, I'm going to mention this one. I've mentioned her already, but that is Venus Escapes to Reads. She continually puts out content that I love, I enjoy, and her reading tastes completely mirror my own, and I feel like she is a kindred soul. So those, I'm not going to just keep it to one, I'm sorry. Alright you guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed filming it. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!